How did I get started in photography? Well, I was pretty young. I really had two introductions to photography. My first one came when I was 9 years old, and I went off to camp one summer. And I remember my folks were packing up my backpack with looked like more shit that I could even carry. And the last thing they did is my mom comes out with this little black Kodak Brownie camera, one of those little black Bakelite cameras that we all had in the 60s, if you remember those. And she said, here's a camera, you can take some pictures. And she gave me a quick little photography lesson. You look through this little window here, you push this button gently, and after you take the picture, you wind this knob, and another number comes up in this little orange window on the back of the camera, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 12. You have 12 pictures you can take. And so I asked for a second roll of film, and my mom typically didn't think that I would properly load the camera, and so she only gave me the one roll of film that she'd loaded in the camera for me. And so, of course, I'd never used a camera before, and I thought a camera was a delicate, precision piece of equipment. I carefully wrapped this thing up with a towel and put it in my backpack. If it had been a Leica, it would have deserved treatment like that, but it was just an old Kodak camera, which, as it turns out, I forgot. I got to camp, and I did all the stuff that kids do at camp, and I forgot about that camera until it was like the last or second to last day there at camp, and I fished the thing out of my pack and decided, well, geez, I need to take some pictures. But I didn't have any interest in photographing my friends or any of the stuff we did. I was going to go out and make some photographs. And so I set my alarm clock for sunrise the next morning. And why, at the age of 9, I knew that sunrise was the nicest light for photography, I had no idea. But obviously I was right about it. Some photographers never ever learn that lesson. So I got up the next morning and slipped out of the cabin with my little camera, and I went walking around, and I shot 12 really, really pretty pictures. I remember walking around and noticing things for the first time, or really paying close attention to things. Dew on the grass, the bluish color of the shadows, the orangish colors of the highlights as the sun came over the horizon and reflected off of the birch trees. And I remember looking at shadows and light, and it took 12 really pretty pictures, or so I thought. And so I did that. Mom and Dad came, picked me up after camp was over, took me home, and I don't know, it was a few weeks or months later, I remembered shooting those pictures, and I think we were eating dinner one night, and I asked my mom, it's like, hey, did you get my film developed? How did my pictures from camp come out? She was like, oh, they didn't come out. I took the film to the drugstore, and it's no good. And I was like, well, what happened? Let me see the negatives. And again, why a 9-year-old kid wanted to see the negatives, I don't know. Maybe I thought I could learn something. Probably I wanted to blame the lab, which is, of course, what we all do now as professionals when anything goes wrong. But those pictures didn't come out, and so I didn't really think much about photography until Christmas the 8th grade, a few years later. And for Christmas, I got this GAF Develop It Yourself Home Darkroom Kit. And it was very cool. It had a little tank and a reel and a thermometer and chemistry for processing film, and little trays and chemistry for processing prints, and a little pack of paper, and a little contact printer with a light bulb in it, and it was very cool. And so I went out and I shot some more pictures, and commandeered a bathroom and set up my little dark room, and processed my first roll of I think it was Plus X, and it didn't come out. Oh, here we go again. Except this time I reread the instructions that came with that little Develop It Yourself kit, and finally understood that orange safe light thing was for prints, and for your film developing you have to do that in total darkness, which I had done under the safe light. And so at least this time I was the lab, and I understood why my pictures didn't come out. So I went out to the drugstore and I bought another roll of Plus X, and I went out and took some more pictures. And this time I loaded that tank and reel in total darkness and processed my film, and lo and behold, the images came out. So after my negatives were dry, I took those and cut up these little 120 negatives and make these little tiny contact prints in this little box with the light in it. And like everybody in photography, that very first time I saw that image begin to come up in the tray of developer, it was a magical moment, and it was just the coolest thing that I ever seen. And so the family never got their bathroom back until a year or so later, when my father realized that Dale was serious about this photography thing, and he built me a proper darkroom out in the garage and got his bathroom back. And so 8th grade was the last year of junior high school. I was starting high school the next year in the 9th grade, and so I signed up for journalism so I could work for the school paper and the yearbook. And so I spent my high school years really as a working photographer, shooting for the school paper, shooting for the yearbook, learning about photography, learning about every aspect from the camera to the darkroom. And I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the artistry of composition and light and everything that you do with the camera, but I also enjoyed the lab. It was the only hobby or art form where you got to work in a laboratory, and I thought that was very, very cool, because it was very precise. You have to mix chemistry just so, and you have to dilute it just so. Your times and temperatures, they're very scientific. So I immersed myself both in the art and the craft and the technique and the science of photography as a high school kid, and read like crazy, and met other photographers, and really, really worked at it. So by the time I graduated high school, I was a fairly accomplished photographer, and I was ready to go on to college and work on photography for a degree and for a career later on. But my start early on was at the age of 9 with a camera, and then a few years later the darkroom. And in the darkroom, the technical aspect of it really, really got my interest at first. And so that's how I got started in photography.